Hello, thank you for your time today. Today I'm going to tell you a story, a tale of my experience implementing 12D Synergy at the City of Newcastle. This is indeed a tale of opportunity, and it couldn't have happened without unique alignment of the stars, a sequence of preceding events. It's also a tale of transformation, and it has produced generational change in how we go about our daily activities. For those of you that have not already made the move to 12D Synergy, my hope is that you'll find my story somehow helpful with your deliberations. And for those of you that have already made the move, I simply hope that you find the story mildly entertaining. First, I will outline the context in which City of Newcastle's acquisition of 12D Synergy occurred. For without these lead-up events, I highly doubt that they would have ever been able to make such an acquisition. Next, I will outline what the attractors were for us in choosing 12D Synergy as our platform. This will start with what was essentially our business case, but I will then go on to what have been the unexpected and quite substantial additional benefits. I'll then briefly outline what has been our three-phase implementation program. For we had an urgent need that the acquisition was originally made, but we also had to learn to walk before we could run. I will then highlight three features, one which is my favourite, another that is changing the way we communicate, and the last, well, that's for our microstation users. But first, a little bit about myself. I'm currently a Senior Civil Project Officer at the City of Newcastle, which means that I undertake a mix of both civil design tasks as well as project management duties. I have 32 years experience in civil design spanning both the private and public sectors. My qualifications include a degree in surveying as well as a degree in social science psychology. I live in the Lake Macquarie region on Awabakal Country, New South Wales, where I enjoy family, hiking and kayaking. I've spent 20 years in local government engineering across 4 councils. My experience has been that the budgets for developing the engineering department is typically small and low priority. At some point we got the design software that we needed, some early customisation was done, some initial training provided. That was where it stopped. It was enough to get the job designed, out the door and constructed, which after all is what we're all about. Our design needs tend not to be overly complicated and stable over time. If we're using internal construction crews, we also don't need to over-design because we can sort out construction problems together without any fear of expensive contract variations. So if what we have and what we've had for the last 20 years does the job, why change? And that's certainly where I found myself after 4 years at Newcastle City Council, as it was known then. Having joined it in 2014 after 6 years at SKM, one of Australia's largest Tier 1 engineering consultancies, I painfully realised this truth, that Newcastle City Council was 20 years behind in its technology and its approach to engineering design. But then things started to change. After what had been a somewhat tumultuous period, we got a new general manager whose first act was to retitle himself as CEO and to rebrand us as City of Newcastle. And despite my initial cynicism, this proved to be far more than just a symbolic change. It was the beginning of what was to become a period of real transformation for Council, a transformation that also, unwittingly, set us up well to manage the pandemic to come. The second change was to occur soon after that same year was that we changed design software from SilvCAD to 12D model. This was a big one for the team, changing from software that we'd been using for 20 years and had stopped being supported 5 years earlier, itself having transformed into magnet software. We moved to 12D model. Even then, this change only came about because our coordinator happened to go on an extended vacation and our acting coordinator took the opportunity to push for that change. Next came perhaps the biggest change to happen to Council in 40 years. We moved buildings. We relocated from the iconic 1977 brutalist roundhouse building in the heart of the Civic Precinct to a newly constructed office block in the West End Precinct, a precinct that is being transformed into Newcastle's new CBD. For Newcastle itself is undergoing a significant transformation, and the new CEO saw an opportunity in this transformation to physically relocate City of Newcastle into the heart of this exciting revitalisation. But this wasn't just about relocating to a new building. It was also about transforming the way we work. This was also a change from personal fixed desk to hot desking for all office staff from direct level down. It was also a change from desktop computers to laptops and other mobile technologies. It was also a change from paper-based filing to paper-like systems. It was our transformation to an activity-based work environment, featuring collaborative workspaces with heaps of meeting rooms, breakout areas, lounge areas, and state-of-the-art technology. But then came COVID-19, so just 6 months after we moved into our new building, we are now working from home. Where we were lucky, however, was that all this preceding change, the move to laptops and mobile technologies, the activity-based working, placed us well, at least from a technology and way of working perspective, to make that change relatively seamlessly. For the engineering team, however, there was one problem remaining. And this is where 12D Synergy enters the story. So why have I just told you all of this? Well, simply because I believe the rest of the story wouldn't have happened without it. So as the story turns to 12D Synergy, and if you're thinking why change, reflect on this. We don't know what challenges lie ahead. The City of Newcastle certainly didn't when it embarked on its period of transformation. But we were able to transition to working from home effectively without losing a day's work. After the first lockdown ended, we returned to the office. We now had the capability to do so with a mixed office work from home arrangement, with no more effort than carting a laptop. This has been so popular that it's now become a permanent arrangement. And for the engineering team, 12D Synergy was to play a key role in that. Before we proceed, however, you need to understand this. 12D Synergy is a system. Because it is a system, there may be no one feature that's going to necessarily make you think, let's get it. I'll discuss some of the features, but none of them alone will necessarily sway you. What will ultimately sway you, what will get you excited, however, is the way all the features are integrated into a system that is greater than the sum of its parts, the very definition of synergy. Because it is a system, and to get the most benefit, you will need to invest time and effort. But my experience is that you'll get strong immediate returns on that investment, especially if you had a phased implementation strategy as we did. Working from home provided a huge opportunity to rapidly deploy not only a new piece of software, but a new system that would ultimately transform the way we work. The opportunity was purely chance. 12D Synergy was simply the right solution to a problem created by a rapidly evolving crisis. A crisis that evoked an emergency response mindset within management, which in turn led to the bypassing of business as usual processes. This not only enabled us to rapidly deploy 12D Synergy, but it set us up on a course of transformation that will far outlast the crisis. Rapid deployment. 4 weeks. 4 weeks from thought bubble, so just what is 12D Synergy anyway, to being fully rolled out to the design and survey teams. By local government standards, this is as good as it gets, at least in my experience. Not to belabor the point, but that was 4 weeks from initial contact to management approval, to installation on servers, to initial customizations, to user testing, to fully rolled out and operational. This was an amazing example of what can be achieved when management, IT, the end user, and the vendor all work collaboratively together towards one goal, and all initiated from the team level. So just what was the business case that enabled such rapid deployment? The business case was just an email to my coordinator outlining our options for staying operational whilst working from home. There was just one driver: managing large data sets over the internet. My concern: data speed and data integrity. Essentially, we considered 3 options. The first, work directly from the server over the VPN. The second, work directly from our local C drive. And the third, 12D Synergy. The first option was to work exactly as we did in the office. That is, to work directly off the server, except over the VPN. So I tested this option with a moderate-sized 12D model. There were 1,950 files at 304 megabytes, which included 2 shared models, all over an NBN 50 internet connection. What would normally take 30 seconds in the office to load and open took 10 minutes to load and open at home. And this would be the case every time that I opened the project. This is because it would be downloading that data afresh each time. This instantly made me nervous. What if the internet were to drop out? How would the data integrity be? Would the model become corrupted? It was immediately apparent that this option was going to be impractical for all but the smallest projects. The second option, to work off our local C drive and back up to the network each day, had obvious problems. It was reliant on remembering to copy back to the network server at the end of the day. You also end up with multiple copies of the job floating around. Which one's the master copy? Is the copy on the server the most current copy? And so on. The third option was 12D Synergy, and it was immediately obvious that this was the best option. This option offered industry best practice for data storage, management and transmission. There's only one source of truth. Because the local copy is locked unless checked out, the server copy is always the master copy until the local copy is checked back in. What's more, everyone else knows whether a job is checked out or not. There is less internet data transmission. Because the local copy is always stored on the local drive, only change files need to be updated. Furthermore, because 12D Synergy deals with deltas, partial changes in files, not even the entire file need to be updated, just to change part of the file. Of course, all this happens automatically for you in the background. All you need to do is check out and check in. The other appealing feature was that it has a cloud or bring your own server option. There are legislative requirements, at least in New South Wales, that council must physically store the data within the state. Being able to host 12D Synergy on our server was appealing to City of Newcastle at the time. So that was the business case, simply data management. And if that was all it did, we would have been happy. It was during the initial demonstration, however, that it became apparent that 12D Synergy was not just about managing 12D model projects. It was also an integrated system for managing all project data. But first, we had to learn how to walk before we could run. And this is where our three-phase implementation strategy kicks in. For as I've said, we had one very pressing need for 12D Synergy, which was 12D model data management. So for the first year, we simply focused on that one aspect, get all of our current 12D model projects into 12D Synergy and keep on working. Meanwhile, as the champion in the team, I explored and trialled and played with the other features. I then packaged them up into a new job template and rolled it out to the team. And this was the start of phase 2, which was to move all of our project data into 12D Synergy as well. For new projects anyway. And next, and still to come, will be phase 3, which will be to move from hosting 12D Synergy on our own server to hosting on the cloud. This change is primarily being instigated by our IT department, who are moving all of council's data to the cloud. So before I delve into the highlighted features, there's two further points I wish to make about data management. Firstly, City of Newcastle makes use of a mix of permanent staff supplemented with panel contracts for the provision of in-house design services. Originally, we insisted that these contractors sat in our office as one of the team and used our systems, which gave us complete control over the project data. That is, was all stored on our servers. Now, with working remotely becoming our permanent fixture of the workplace, they too are working remotely either from home or their office. What 12 Synergy enables us to do is to still have complete control of the project data by having the contractors and our consultants undertake all of the work on our 12D Synergy site. That is, they're not just transmitting to us some predefined set of deliverables at predefined dates. All of the project data is stored on our site and under our control, in terms of both access and permissions. This enables us to work in collaboration with our delivery partners. Secondly, every time a file is checked back in, it creates a new version of itself. This gives the capability to be able to roll back to previous versions if need be. What's more, because 12D Synergy makes use of deltas, it only saves partial changes to files, effectively recompiling previous versions if needed. This means two things: reduce storage, and you no longer ever need to make a copy as a fallback or milestone copy. You just create a new version instead. You can also use the check-in and check-out feature to cancel or check out if you do not wish to save the changes that you've just made. This has proved useful many times. I'm now going to run through a series of slides that demonstrate just how easy it is to save an email and its attachments. Along the way, this will highlight a couple of other features. This graphic shows my Outlook inbox. To save this dial before you dig email to the 12D Synergy project folder involves simply dragging it into the right-hand pane and selecting the project. What's more, if this email had been a direct reply or forward to a previous email, then not even be a need to do this step, as the email would automatically be saved to the project folder when opened. Having saved this email, we now wish to save the attachments to a different folder. From the 12D Synergy menu in Outlook, up here, just click Save Attachments, and then select the attachments that you wish to save. Next, as the email is already associated with the project, this will open up the project folder. You simply have to select the desired subfolder to save the attachment into. At this point, we can opt to apply a file naming rule. This naming rule will rename the attachment to a predefined rule. So in this example, I'm going to rename the file to be the word plan with the utility provider adjoining. For consistency, the utility provider is selected from a drop-down list. In this example, the effect of this naming rule will be a simple, easy, identifiable, and consistent list of plans. And with that attachment, the attachment is saved. So just zooming in on a little onto that dialog box, and you can see the effect of the naming rule and just how easy the list is to read. Here there are a couple other points of interest to note as well. Firstly, in the lower right panel, you'll notice an associations panel. Just looking at that a little closer, you can see that there is a link to the email that this plan is associated with. If you need to refer back to the source document at some stage, then simply click on this link. In this case, it will open up the email folder. You can also see here all the other project emails. The columns contain attributes automatically extracted from the email and are customizable. It can be sorted and filtered. You can also have the search function. Essentially, you have a project email system identical to Outlook in function. The other thing that you may have noticed is that this plan is now up to version 3. This is simply because I've updated the dial before you dig searches since the first one. Because the naming rule consistently saves the plan with the same name each time that I save the attachment, it creates a new version. There's no need to keep old copies of each plan because you can always check its history. The history button here, clicking on that, and it brings up the full history. You can now refer to the details of each version and then roll back to a previous version if need be. So that was just a brief overview of email management to hopefully give you an idea of how quick and easy it is to save emails. 10 to 15 seconds to save both the email and its attachment. Along the way, I showed you an example of how we are using file naming rules, and also showed you an example of how 12D Synergy is integrated with the attachments associated with the source email. As well, I showed you an example of versions and file history. So the next feature that I want to show you is the task list. When I first saw this feature, I thought, oh yeah, I've tried various task lists on and off over the years without much success, but I've now grown to really like this one and find it particularly useful at a project level. I first started to come to appreciate this feature quite early on. At the time I was looking after 2 trainees. After we got through boot camp training and I was starting to work a little more independently, my role became more to set a path for them to follow. As I thought of things I needed doing, I would simply add them to the list, prioritise and assign them. Since then we continue to make greater use of it. Now that we have a project support officer on the team who's assuming many of the tasks on the project, we're using this as a more convenient means of communication than lengthy email chains, as it keeps your communications neatly bundled within the task and easily visible to all. So just look at the REF task here. You can see that for this task there's a fairly simple instruction. You set a priority and assign the task up here. You can now also set dependencies and due dates if you wish on these tabs. Then as the task progresses, simply update the progress bar. Then you can also see in the right hand margin that each time the task is updated, the revision note is added, which gives a simple historical timeline of task progress. The other neat feature is that you can also associate files with the task. So you go to the Associations tab and link the files that are relevant to that task. Then finally, you can also add notes along the way. So rather than having a long email train, your communications are now neatly bundled up within the task. Also, each time the task is updated, the task owner is notified by email that it has been updated. So there's no need to fear missing out on an important update. As I mentioned, this is quickly becoming a mainstay of the way we communicate on the project. The final feature I'm going to discuss is CAD management. Both AutoCAD and BrizCAD are fully integrated with 12D Synergy. But as City of Newcastle uses MicroStation, I cannot speak for this. Unfortunately, for various reasons, MicroStation is not integrated with 12D Synergy. Notwithstanding this situation, it is entirely manageable, and 12D Synergy is still my preferred platform for working with MicroStation, offering advantages to working off the server over the VPN. Just requires some tips, tricks and workarounds, which is not unusual for CAD users, and it is these I'm now going to turn to. Firstly, why is 12D Synergy still my preferred platform? Well, you can still enjoy version control of each check-in, still enjoy faster data transmission because of deltas, still enjoy faster and smoother application functioning because you're working off your local drive. You can still enjoy file naming rules, still enjoy being able to associate files with emails, tasks, etc. You can create new files from templates, and CAD files are stored with the rest of the project. So it's these benefits that make the workarounds worthwhile, which themselves are not that onerous. So here is our typical CAD folder layout. Not worrying too much about our naming convention, but you'll notice where we have an underscore number, this is the sheet number that follows. Now from the file name alone, it's not immediately obvious what the file is. So this brings us to tip 1. What we've done is we've added a file attribute called drawing description, which is just a plain English description of the file, and it's displayed in the adjacent point column. This is handy when you know with dozens of sheets. The other thing that you will notice is the checkout and the version control columns, which are both handy for drawing management. Another nice feature is creating new files from a template, which is accessible from the top menu bar. Here we have 3 templates to choose from. The first is our sheet template. It contains our title block reference and title block text reference. Sheet template. Tip 2. I found this all works much smoother if these 2 files already are stored in the job rather than being referenced in from another location. Now tip 3. This is easily managed by storing them in the job template. Here is part of our job template containing the folder structure that is created whenever a new job uses this template. As part of this, you can also include any standards files that you want rolled out on each project. So use your job template to roll out files such as title blocks or other things like standard chains in 12D model. Tip 4, and this is perhaps the biggest tip, is get all. Because MicroStation isn't integrated with 12D Synergy, 12D Synergy doesn't know that a DGN has references attached. So when you open up a DGN, 12D Synergy doesn't know that it has to also download or update references as well. This can lead to either missing references or out-of-date references. The trick here is get all. This is just a simple right-click on the folder and click. Just get in the habit of doing a get all and it'll fix up most problems that you'll encounter. This is because unlike everything else in 12D Synergy where you're working from the 12D Synergy interface with little awareness of the workings of the local drive, for the most part when using MicroStation you're working directly with the local drive. For example, when you attach a reference you grab it from the local drive and not the 12D Synergy interface. So remember, if it doesn't look right, get all. And one last simple tip that is also applicable for many situations. 12D Synergy has a folder stored on the local drive called Uploads. 12D Synergy monitors this folder in the background, and if any files land in there, it will automatically prompt you to upload them to 12D Synergy. Tip 5 is to pin this to your Quick Access folder in File Explorer. Then, for example, when you print to a PDF that you want to save to 12D Synergy, save to this location for quick uploading. Notwithstanding the integration falling short at this stage, working with MicroStation and 12D Synergy is easily manageable and still offers significant benefits. When I started working in 1989, desktop PCs were just making their way into the drawing office. We would back up data onto floppy disk, which would be then taken home by someone for security. We were still using a mix of pen plotters and manual drafting on tracing paper to run off prints through an ammonia printing machine. A good programmable calculator was still a valuable friend as Lotus 123, the precursor to Excel, was knocking at the door. We were still pre-Windows using command lines in MS-DOS, for which the file manager Xtree felt heaven sent. We've come a long way since then. Now we use laptops connected to multiple screens that are backed up continuously on server or cloud. Our drawings are coloured PDFs printed out on laser printers, with even these being replaced by the model on tablets in the field. I can't recall the last time I wrote a program for my programmable calculator. 12D Synergy is simply the next step along our evolutionary path in data management. I'm not a sales rep, I'm just a civil designer at a regional council who, by dumb luck, has stumbled upon a great product. Just as Xtree revolutionised MS-DOS before Windows, 12D Synergy is revolutionising data management in the era of remote working. I believe it's a matter of but when to take that step. Whether you take that step tomorrow or in a year's time or in several years' time, it's up to you. We all progress at different rates. Just don't let yourself become 20 years behind the game. I'm just thankful for having taken the opportunity when we did. So, what happened to the old roundhouse building? It's been repurposed as a 5-star hotel. Opportunity, transformation, when will you take the next step? Thank you for listening to my story today.